Eno was a beautiful woman who lived in the small village of Nka. Both her parents were farmers, and they struggled so hard to take care of Eno and her younger siblings. When Eno was 5 years old, something terrible happened to her parents' farm. There was a war between the village of Nka and its neighboring village, so the warriors from the next village came into Nka and destroyed many farmlands, including all the crops that were growing on the farm. Unfortunately, Eno's parents' farm was one of the farmlands that was damaged. Before the war, Eno's parents were seriously in debt, and they had been hoping for the money they would get from selling their harvest. However, when the raid happened, all their means of repaying their debts were destroyed. Despite seeing the tragedy that had happened, the wealthy man who Eno's parents owed insisted that he would seize their farmland and would only return it when Eno's parents paid their debt. Unfortunately, because of that raid, Eno's parents were never able to pay their debt, and they had no farm to grow more crops. Because of this, life became tough for Eno, her parents, and her siblings. In the absence of their farm, Eno's parents were forced to start farming for other people, and Eno was forced to hawk mangoes, oranges, and other kinds of fruits every day so they could have food on their table. It even got to the point where Eno had to drop out of school because she could not afford to buy books and pencils or pay for the little necessities that were demanded. For many years, Eno and her family continued to struggle. Several times, Eno and her mother would cry and beg the rich man to release their farmland back to them so they could plant on it and pay back their debt after harvesting and selling the crops. But the rich man deliberately refused, and then he warned Eno and her mother never to set foot on his property again. 5 years after life changed for Eno and her family, 2 of her younger siblings drowned in the village river. Since both of her younger siblings were very young, Eno and her parents never allowed them to do anything. Instead, Eno and her parents would struggle every day just to provide for their needs. But one day, something bad happened. There was no food at home that day, and Eno's younger siblings had not eaten anything since the previous night. Their parents had gone out to receive payment for the farmland they had cleared for a fellow villager, while Eno had gone to hawk her fruits in the market as she usually did. After waiting hours for Eno or their parents to return, Eno's younger siblings decided to do something to make some money. They planned on using the money to buy food or biscuits to lessen their hunger until Eno or their parents returned. To carry on with the plan, Eno's younger siblings went to a distant neighbor and asked if she needed them to fetch water for her. At first, the neighbor said no because she knew they were too small to go to their stream alone. But when Eno's younger siblings wouldn't stop persuading her, she agreed. Without wasting time, Eno's younger siblings took 2 large water pots to the stream that afternoon. But unfortunately, they never made it back. No one could explain how the 2 of them drowned in the stream. It was one of the villagers who went to fetch water some minutes after they had drowned that found them. When the news of their children's death reached Eno's parents, their mother fainted. 2 days later, the bodies of Eno's younger siblings were buried. This incident alone cost Eno and her parents a lot of pain. After the burial, Eno's mother even became depressed, and she became a shadow of herself. On the other hand, Eno's father believed that he had failed as a father and that it was his fault that his children died. It was only Eno who didn't blame herself or anyone for the death of her younger siblings. Instead, she blamed poverty, and she made a promise to herself that she would never die poor, and she would do anything to become rich, no matter what it would cost her. Some months after Eno lost her siblings, she met a man named Emeka. Emeka was a young man from another village who was posted to Nka village for his NYSC. Back then, anyone who was posted to Nka village for their NYSC was treated as a demigod. The villagers would treat them nicely, give them free apartments, and make them feel at home. One day, while hawking her fruits to support her parents, Eno met Emeka and he ended up buying a lot of fruits from her. As time passed, Eno and Emeka became friends, and Eno was deeply fascinated by people who completed their university education. Every day, while Eno would go to hawk her fruits, she would stop by Emeka's house in the evenings to talk to him. Emeka was pretty nice to Eno. He would answer all her questions about the university and share stories about life at the university. Slowly, Eno fell in love with Emeka, and the two of them secretly began to date each other. Meanwhile, before Eno agreed to date Emeka, Emeka had promised her that he would remain in Nka village so they would always be together. He even promised to help her complete her secondary school education and then send her to the university. 2 months before Emeka completed his NYSC in Nka village, Eno found out that she was pregnant. Confused and heartbroken, Eno went to Emeka and told him about her pregnancy. When Emeka heard that he had impregnated Eno, he promised and assured her that he would take responsibility for the pregnancy and they would start a family together. Eno had no idea that Emeka was just deceiving her. In fact, 2 days after Eno broke the news of her pregnancy to Emeka, he ran away from Nka village and she never saw him again. Not knowing what to do next, Eno was forced to tell her parents about her pregnancy. She knew that she had disappointed them, but she believed they would forgive her. Unluckily for Eno, things did not turn out the way she had planned. When her parents learned that she was pregnant, they could not tolerate the shame she brought to their name, so they kicked Eno out of their house with her pregnancy. Eno cried for days and begged her parents to forgive her and take her back, but their minds were made up. Already, some of the villagers had begun to gossip about her pregnancy, and it was no longer hidden. When Eno could no longer stand the prying eyes of villagers who wouldn't stop staring at her whenever she went to hawk her fruits, she decided to move to the city. Eno had heard stories about life in the city, and she had been looking forward to visiting it all her life, so she made up her mind to go there. Life in the city was not easy for Eno one bit. With the little savings she had, she rented a decent-sized apartment and started a new roadside business. Depending on how much she had, Eno would either choose to make and sell fufu or roast yam and plantain by the road. It was the little money she earned from the business that she used to take care of herself throughout her pregnancy. Despite having a business, Eno still struggled every day, and on some nights, she would cry herself to sleep when she was overwhelmed. 8 months after moving from Nka village, Eno gave birth to a beautiful baby girl and named her Jewel. To give her daughter the life and luxury she never had, Eno worked day and night under the rain and sun to care for Jewel. But when Jewel was 2 years old, Eno noticed that her baby would fall sick all the time. It was always one sickness to another, and she spent a lot of money trying to treat her baby. One day, one of Eno's regular customers who bought fufu from her all the time advised her to take her baby to the hospital so she could know what exactly was causing her sickness, and Eno listened. With the little money she had put aside in case of an emergency, Eno took Jewel to the hospital, and after a series of tests, the doctor found out that the reason for Jewel's constant sickness was because of her genotype. She had sickle cell, and this meant that she would fall sick more often in the future. Upon hearing the news, Eno was very heartbroken, and she cried till her eyes almost fell out of her sockets. On that day, Eno wished that she did not have an affair with Emeka. She believed that it was her fault that her daughter had to suffer for the rest of her life. To make things up to her daughter, Eno did everything in her power to make life comfortable for Jewel. Sometimes, if her fufu or roasted yam business was not moving, she would hawk pure water and drinks while carrying Jewel on her back to ensure that she never lacked food and always took her medication on time. Eno continued working so hard until she was able to send Jewel to school. One day, Eno was trying to roast some plantain for a customer who was waiting for her when a red jeep pulled over in front of her stand. At first, when the red jeep parked in front of her stand, Eno wanted to shout at the driver for covering her wares. But when the driver came out of the car and Eno recognized her instantly, she began to shout in joy. "Idara!" Eno called the woman's name in shock. "Is this you?" Eno asked as she rushed to hug the woman. Idara was one of Eno's close friends while she was still in secondary school. In fact, they lived in the same neighborhood and often went to school together. But shortly after Eno dropped out of school to assist her family, Idara and her family moved out of Nka village. "Yes, in the flesh," Idara responded as she hugged her old friend. Idara had become rich. Even her dark skin had become lighter and she looked very beautiful and healthy. "Ah! God is good! God, when will you visit me as you have visited my friend?" Eno spoke as she danced dramatically. She even forgot that she had a customer waiting to buy some plantain. After Eno attended to her customer, she rushed to a nearby kiosk and bought a cold bottle of drink for her friend. "My friend, please manage this one," Eno said as she handed the bottle of drink to Idara, who was already seated. "How did you know I was here?" Eno asked. "My sister, I was heading down the road when I spotted you from a distance. At first, I didn't think you were the one. But when I parked my car and looked at you properly, I knew it was you," Idara said. "Is that your baby?" Idara pointed to Jewel, who was sleeping on a small mat. "Yes, that's my daughter." Eno smiled. He must be a very lucky man." Idara teased Eno. "My sister, let's not go there. It's a long story." Eno sighed. "It's okay, my friend. We have all day," Idara said. For the remainder of that day, Idara stayed there with Eno, and Eno narrated all that had happened to her and how Emeka had deceived her. After they talked for hours, Eno begged Idara to help her and maybe introduce her to the business that made her so wealthy, and Idara promised to do that. A few days after Idara and Eno reunited, Idara took Eno to the place she claimed was the source of her wealth. Upon getting there, Eno was shocked to see that Idara was a part of a secret female occultic group where they sacrificed people for wealth. When Eno realized what she had done, she tried to return, but Idara and the other occultic sisters threatened her and said she would run mad if she didn't join them. Afraid that something terrible would happen to her, Eno stayed and listened to all they had to say. The occultic queen told Eno that in order for her to get wealthy, she would have to sacrifice the one she loved the most. And for Eno, the one she loved the most was her daughter, Jewel. After the brief meeting that day, Eno told Idara that she would not and could not sacrifice her daughter because she was all she had. But Idara gave Eno many reasons why it was wise for her to sacrifice Jewel. Idara told Eno that sacrificing Jewel was an opportunity for her to get out of poverty forever. Also, she claimed that Jewel was sick, and if she agreed to kill her, she would only be showing her mercy. That day, Idara said so many things to convince her friend. She even went as far as telling her that no man would want to marry a single mother with a sickle cell child. So she should just sacrifice Jewel, then she would get married again and bear other children. That day, when Eno went home, she couldn't stop thinking about all the things Idara had told her. She looked at her Jewel and began to cry. Already, they were really suffering, and watching Jewel struggle with her health every day really broke Eno's heart. She believed that killing Jewel would be her granting mercy to her daughter, so she agreed to sacrifice Jewel. 2 days after Eno agreed to sacrifice Jewel for wealth, her poor daughter developed a very high fever and some breathing issues. To play her part, Eno rushed Jewel to the hospital, but unfortunately, hours after she got there, Jewel passed away. Just like Idara had assured Eno, the same day Jewel passed away, Eno returned home to a lot of money on her bed. It was almost unbelievable. With her new source of wealth, Eno knew that her life was about to change. But she had no idea how much trouble she had gotten herself into just for material wealth. Watch out for part 2. Did you enjoy this story? Tell us your favorite part in the comment section below. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Also, do not forget to follow our channel on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.